So thank you guys for troubleshooting this with me and doing everything you can to participate. Welcome to the virtual presentation on change and transition during a medical release from the military. After introductions of your presenters, we'll have you, the participants, introduce yourselves. Next, we will be showing you a few of the many tools in a virtual classroom that you will be asked to use during the presentation, such as raising your hand and the chat feature, and how to use the whiteboard tools. And then we'll talk about some aspects of change, the 3 stages of transition, the role of hope in successful transition, and ideas to enhance our programs to include veterans and their families. So as you guys already know, I am the presenter for the session. My name is Tina Thomason, and I am the Veteran Family Coordinator for the North Bay Military Family Resource Center. The Veteran Family Program is a new program that has been launched to support families as they transition from military to civilian life after a medical release from the military. I'm really looking forward to talking about how change and transition impact families and hearing your guys' ideas about how to best support them. So I'll hand it over to Joanna to introduce herself.
All right, thanks everyone. And big thanks to Tina for being so patient while we worked through those issues today. It's always hard. And in case you didn't know, this is her final project for an 8-week course that she's been taking on how to adapt your live presentation to a virtual classroom. So we appreciate your support, Donna and Diane, coming out and just supporting her in this endeavor to bring your programs to veterans, even if they can't make it to your centers, and this is how we're doing it. And she has put together an excellent presentation for a basic introduction, and I actually could see her developing and turning into even more virtual programs. It's such great information. So I'm the virtual program developer for Canadian Military Family Services US. So I work with all the Canadian military families who've been stationed on a US outcamp, and then I'm also a co-facilitator of the class. So again, thank you so much for joining us today. And Tina, I took the ball back from you because you hadn't advanced the slide. Would you like me to pass the ball back so that you can take over advancing the slide?
Oh, sure. I did press forward on my screen. It did advance.
Well, it advances. We just didn't see it.
Oh, weird.
That's okay. You've got the ball now, so go ahead and advance the slide, and you're ready to go.
Okay. So actually, just before I do, I just want to have the participants introduce themselves. So can everyone just share their name, and on a scale from 1 to 10, 1 being little comfort and 10 being a lot of comfort, how comfortable you feel supporting people through change and transition. Why don't we start with Donna?
My name's Donna Rusi. I work at the MFRC in North Bay. I'm the office manager and information and employment coordinator. And my comfort level of supporting people in regards to the Veteran Family Program is about a 6.5.
That's very precise. Thanks, Donna. And Diane?
My name is Diane Saracen-Dubois, and I'm the Community Integration, Second Language, and Parent Support Coordinator. This is a nice break from my play group. I just left 20-something kids. So as far as the number, I guess I'm about at the same as Donna. I have, before Tina joined our team, I was supporting families in the past, not too sure if I was doing the right thing or not. So I guess it would be about 6.5 as well.
Great. So let's see if those numbers change at all by the end of the session. So the next thing we'll do is just review some of the tools of the classroom. Did that change? Did the slide change for everybody?
Yes, participants
Perfect.
panel.
You're good to go.
Awesome, just wanted to make sure.
Oh.
I think we lost your microphone again, Tina. You want to type in the chat box. Why don't you go ahead and log out and then call back in using the phone option. when it rains, it pours with technical difficulties, right?
Yeah.
Let's pause. Okay, you're good to go ahead.
Okay, so I'm not sure where I cut off for you guys.
At the very beginning of participant panel.
All right. Okay, so first off, let me guide your eyes to the top right-hand side of the screen, the participants panel. In the participants panel, you'll find the name of each participant. We've put a picture of the participants panel on the whiteboard for demonstration purposes. It's here that you can mute and unmute by clicking on the microphone next to your name. So we've had lots of practice with that so far, so I think we can skip over practicing that. For the most part, we try to keep participants unmuted unless there's a significant background noise because we want to keep the session interactive. Below the participant panel, you will see the chat panel located in the lower right-hand side of your screen. We encourage you to use the chat feature throughout the presentation for comments and questions. And to send a chat to all participants, simply select All Participants from the chat drop-down. Joanna is pointing to this drop-down on our illustration. Then type in the chat box the chat that you wish to share and hit Send or Enter. Your chat will then appear in the chat box. So let's give that a try. In your chat box, type in your most recent transition that you or your family has experienced and send it to all participants. Sun moving out. Can everybody else hear me?
Yeah, you sound good.
Okay.
Maybe they're just thinking. Yeah, sometimes it takes a second to think about that significant change.
So Donna says that moving to a new house, and Diane transitioned from house to living at the trailer on the weekends. So everybody's transition really had to do with moving houses, so that's interesting. So let me just advance the slide. And at the bottom of the participant panel is a menu bar with pictures of tools. Again, we have put a picture of what this looks like on the whiteboard to demonstrate. Each picture is a toggle, so you would push it once to activate and push it again to put it away. So for example, in order for you to raise your hand, you need to click on the toggle of the picture of the hand. And let's try that. Let's give that a try. Please raise your hand and then lower your hand. Good job. And to the right of the hand, you will find the green check and the red X. These tools can be used to answer yes or no questions anytime during the session. So let's give that a try. Can everyone give me a green check when they found that tool and a red X? Wonderful. You guys are quick learners, or might have done this before, once or twice, probably. If you hover over each toggle, you will see their name, and at the end of the menu bar, you will see the happy face, which is the emoticon tool. Beside the happy face, you'll see a black arrow or drop-down menu. A drop-down menu tells you that there's a choice. So if you click on the drop-down menu beside the happy face, you'll see a choice of emoticon. Can everyone please choose the emoticon that reflects how you're feeling today? Happy. I'm going to include myself here. Yeah. Maybe that one. Awesome. Great. So those are just a few ways that we can see your body language when in the online classroom. And feel free to use the emoticons throughout the next hour. And we ask if you have to step away during the session, please put up the coffee mug emoticon so we know you have left. And the final tools we're going to look at today are the whiteboard tools. These tools allow you to write, draw, or annotate directly onto the slide, which acts as a whiteboard. These tools are located in the whiteboard toolbar, which is found in the upper left-hand corner of the screen and looks like the illustration we have on the slide. So please give me a green check when you guys have found the whiteboard toolbar on your computer. Awesome. So we'll only be using 2 of the tools for today's presentation, the pointer tool and the text tool. The pointer is the first icon in the toolbar that looks like an arrow pointing to the right. To activate the pointer, click once on the arrow, then come down to the slide and click once anywhere on the slide for your arrow to appear. Perfect. So now to the right of the arrow tool is the text tool. Again, if you click on the T once and then click to the right of your pointer tool, you can start typing in text. So go ahead and type in your name. A couple things to know about the text tool is that in order for the rest of the class to see what you have written, you have to click your mouse somewhere else on the screen when you're done typing. This causes your typing to appear. The other thing is if your default color is hard to see on the slide, such as yellow on the white background, you can change the color of your text and drawing tools by clicking on the drop-down menu to the right of the color box in the toolbar. Select a new color and then click on the text tool to type in the new color. So feel free to give that a try. Wonderful. Okay, so on to the content. We're going to talk about change and transition. So changes are based on an external event. Something happens that results in a fundamental difference in your situation. How you react and adjust to this change is a transition. A transition is the process you go through when change happens. So some changes are profound, such as losing a job, and some changes are simple, like walking a new way home from school. There are 2 kinds of changes, voluntary and involuntary. Voluntary changes are the changes you choose to make and are prepared for. When people take charge and choose to make changes in their life, some common feelings are excitement, relief, or anxiety. Involuntary changes are ones that happen and are beyond your control. So initially, most people react to involuntary changes with anger, sadness, or fear. And changes can be both voluntary and involuntary, depending on the situation and how you view it. So for example, you may voluntarily choose to get additional training, but you may be doing this to avoid losing your job and feel you have no choice in the matter. So there can be mixed feelings associated with this type of change. So let's brainstorm some examples of each type of change. Can everyone please use your pointer tool to claim a row on the whiteboard? And Diane, there you are. Great. So now use your text tool to fill in some examples of voluntary, involuntary, and mixed type changes. Remember to click away when you're done typing, and give me a green check when you're done. I'm going to keep that happy face with a question mark up for the whole thing because now I'm kind of kerfuffled with all the changes. And remember to give me a green check when you're done and ready to share. Great. Diane, do you mind sharing first what you wrote? And just remember you're on mute in case you're talking and we can't hear you.
You're right, I was on mute. So moving to the trailer on weekends is definitely something exciting for the family. And it's little bit of anxiety because we always don't know what we're going to find when we reopen the trailer at the beginning of the spring. For involuntary, I said going on disability or getting sick would definitely be a transition. And so, for example, if it's a sudden illness like a car accident, so you might not be able to work. And for mixed, I kind of joked and put a happy face. I said getting married. It's voluntary, but yet there are definitely scary times.
Yeah, that's a great point. There's often mixed feelings, even with really positive changes, or what some people may consider positive changes. Mm-hmm. Does anybody else want to share?
I put involuntary. One of the descriptions there is aging. You don't have control over your aging. That being like the tinsel growing out of the side of my head. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah, I can hear
you. And retirement as involuntary, but sometimes it's involuntary retirement. So you're kind of forced out. So with the military, you can only work to a certain age. But if you have a civilian job, then you can work as long as you want, as long as you can, which would be my case.
Yeah, those are great examples, sure. And is that Margaret or Joanna with their hand up?
Margaret.
Oh, hi, Margaret.
You'll see Joanne as the host. You're welcome, Tina. You'll see Joanne as the host. The hostess with the mostest, and I'm just the me.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, so Donna and you and I have the similar thoughts. Voluntary would be the change the hair color, so I've stopped using dye. And my mom keeps saying, I'll pay for you to dye your hair. Gotta love it.
Yeah.
I love that expression. Involuntary, a death of a loved one, or like you said, Donna, losing a job. Like that's something you can't control. And mixed, I would say, our upcoming move to Germany because the spouse's career, we didn't have any choice, but we did have choice. We could have said no.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really good example. So even though a change may feel forced, but ultimately you did have a choice somewhere along the line in it, right? Good example.
Because we all know how much the military likes it when you say no.
Okay, so here's some more examples of voluntary, involuntary, and mixed type changes. So as I'm reading, use your text tool and type your initials in each box of any of the changes that you might have experienced. So for voluntary, there's accepting a promotion, getting married, changing your hairstyle, beginning a new exercise program. Involuntary, a change in work situation, like being fired, laid off, decreased demand, change of relationship due to death or divorce, diagnosis of a serious health condition, and some examples of mixed type changes, taking a course to prevent losing your job, or buying a new vehicle due to an insurance write-off. So just some more examples of different types of changes. And lots of experience with change, it looks like. Lots of common experiences, too. But I bet everybody's experience of that same type of change is different in your response to it. So the transition piece probably is a little different according to each individual. Jonah, what's the initial in the empty box for?
The unknown.
Oh, the unknown change. Good. Good examples. Okay, so moving on, change can happen in more than one area of a person's life at once, at home, to your health, to your family. Sometimes individual change areas can feel somewhat manageable, but when change occurs in several areas, it can feel overwhelming, leading to a great deal of confusion and uncertainty. So by looking at life in 8 key areas, you can determine how much change is taking place in each and how a person is responding to that change. So this helps a person to recognize which areas they want to concentrate on. So as focus is put on stabilizing these key areas, a sense of control is regained over the changes. So the main key areas in life are home, where you live and how you live; relationships, your partner, family, friends, and community; health, your level of health, physical fitness, and leisure; personal, your spiritual, emotional, and personal development; learning, your skills, training, and knowledge; finances, the money you earn and the expenses you have; work, any paid or volunteered work you do; and your workplace, where you work and the people you work with. So families who are experiencing the transition from military to civilian life are often experiencing changes that may be voluntary, involuntary, and mixed in many of these key areas all at the same time. So let's brainstorm some changes that a medical release from the military might trigger for families. So if everyone can please use your pointer tool to claim a column in the whiteboard. So up and down, great. And use your text tool to fill in some examples of changes that might be happening in each key area for people who are medically releasing from the military. And remember to click away when you're done typing. And I'll ask everybody to give me a green check when you're done and ready to share. Easier to ask for permission or for forgiveness rather than permission, I agree.
Tina, can you repeat the instruction again about what to write in the columns?
Yeah, sure. So in each column, in each key area, write an example or that could be happening to a family during a medical release from the military. So for home, what kind of change might be happening for a family who's transitioning from military to civilian life in that key area?
It's really amazing when you start looking at it like this and really breaking it down, just how many areas are affected by this.
Yeah, so how many smaller or more precise changes are happening in each area because of one larger change?
Yeah, so much. That must be very overwhelming.
I sent that link out to everybody that I've worked with that's from the veteran community, Margaret. So, and I did plan on attending tonight. I don't know, it'll be touch and go according to the internet service, so. And whoever is interested or wants to volunteer to share, I'll just get you to raise your hand. whenever you're ready. Diane, do you want to start? And you're muted again, just a reminder.
Yeah. For home, they possibly have to either sell or downsize because of financial issues. And so that's a big stress in itself. Because of the stress that they might be experiencing, that could have a conflict on their, it could become an issue with their relationships. So there could be stress and arguments and conflicts, and kids who don't want to move, for example, maybe they're thinking, you know, okay, we're going to go out and buy our retirement home, or we're going to leave North Bay area and move back to PEI or whatever it is. So the kids don't want to do that. So there could be conflict not only between their spouses, but also with kids. So with all that conflict, their health is being jeopardized because they might not be sleeping well, eating well, et cetera, et cetera. For personal, not knowing what lies ahead. So it could bring on low self-esteem, maybe, you know, bad habits come back, and learning, and the anxiety of possibly going back to school, and having to deal with all the stress at the same time. Financial is the stress about paying off the mortgage, for example, and all the bills because, you know, the paycheck that's coming in the house might be a little bit lower than that. So they're feeling that stress and having to live with thinking that, you know, oh, they'll pay off their house, lots of time to pay off their house, and all of a sudden, hey, I need to leave my military life. Work, having to say goodbye to coworkers, even though they might be used to that, saying goodbye for every few years. At this point, it's really, really saying goodbye to their coworkers because, you know, they say being in the military is like having a family, right? And so all of a sudden they feel left out. And so that's the one I had for the workplace, which is really going to bother their self-esteem and how they feel about themselves. It's like they need to find themselves a new family outside of their own family, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are great examples, Diane. And actually the having to say goodbye to coworkers, especially with leaving the military, that also overlaps with relationships because so much of a person's identity in the military is wrapped up into their relationships with their coworkers.
Yes, and you hear about that very, very often, that it's like a military, you know, and spouses, you know, like what? We don't go to the mess anymore on Fridays? Like, what are we going to do in our life? It's like my mom and dad, I remember listening to them, which they're not with the military, but when we all left the house, they kind of looked at each other at supper time and said, so what do we talk about now? So it's like one of these things that, so what do we do now that that family's not around us?
Yeah, good, great. Thanks for sharing that. Does anybody else want to share?
I wrote for home, obviously moving, either from the PMQ patch where they could currently reside, or moving back to where they're closer to family. Relationships between a marriage, it puts a lot of stress on the relationship when there's difficulties in health. Dealing with many health professionals, trying to get the help and trying to get the connections to all the referrals out in the community. That's a challenge in itself, right? You need a personal assistant in order to help out with that, I think. personal. I would feel, if I put myself in their shoes, learning to deal with all of the change that's happening, depending on how long you've been within the military. And when it comes to learning, I think, oh my goodness, can I go back to school? Can I do it? Can I learn again? Finances, oh, definitely. Where's the money going to come from to do all of that stuff? And now I have to go and find work. I've never done that before since I was 18 or whatever, right? I have to go and look for work. I have to build a resume. I have to, pound the pavement. How am I going to do that? And workplace, when you change from, working with the military or for the military, and then you go into Sylvie Street, it is a huge change. I mean, there's so many different things that you need to adapt to, and so many different rules that don't apply to the military. So.
Yeah, those are great examples, and lots of what you talked about I've heard from people who have come to talk to me as well, especially can I do it? So can I, leave the military kind of way of talking, even the language and stuff like that, and having to all of a sudden use a different kind of language in the civilian world is a big worry for a lot of people. And the other point I just wanted to touch on too is the money. Where's the money going to come from? A lot of people have to all of a sudden learn how to work with Veterans Affairs, and that's a whole other ball game there too.
Right.
So awesome examples. It's pretty clear that going through a medical release can initiate a lot of changes in many areas of a person's life, and each change initiates another set of changes as well. So the way a person goes through these changes are referred to as the transition. So next we'll talk about the stages of transition. So transition has 3 basic stages: the ending stage, the neutral stage, and the new beginning stage. Each stage involves different feelings and processes. Some people deal with one stage before moving on to the next. Other times people slide back and forth between stages. So nobody goes through the stages exactly the same, and there's no right or wrong way to go through each stage either. It's very individual, but it can be a pretty big challenge for some families. So we'll talk about these stages in a bit more detail. So the ending stage, transition starts with an ending. Before a new change takes place, something else typically has to end. What can be helpful in dealing with things that are new and different is to acknowledge that there has been a loss. So loss can be very complicated. It's even more difficult when the loss is hard to identify or isn't tangible. So for example, it's easier to identify that I've lost my car keys, but it's harder to identify the loss of control or loss of freedom than I might experience due to losing my keys. To make it even more complex, I may not realize how I'm being emotionally impacted by the loss. So there may be many conflicting feelings of anger, shock, sadness, and even excitement. It may be hard to accept the situation that causes someone to worry, doubt themselves, or lose confidence. So again, let's do some brainstorming. Let's think about the examples of changes that we talked about earlier. Each stage will have a variety of possible losses that a person could be experiencing, and every individual could be responding to that loss differently. So for example, a loss due to a medical release, I could have a sense of loss of my identity, so losing my my self-concept as a soldier, or even for families, losing that identity of being a military family, or as a child, a base brat. So that's the loss, but some emotional responses could be different according to each individual. So there could be, they could feel lost, empty, anxious, depressed, or perhaps even relieved and hopeful. Maybe, families didn't enjoy the military lifestyle, and so they're relieved that now they're being released and able to live a more civilian lifestyle. So let's do some more brainstorming. Use your pointer to claim a row, and use your text tool to type in some possible losses that a person may experience due to a medical release. and then some possible emotional responses that could be felt in response to that loss. And give me a green check when you're ready to share. And just a reminder to click away when you're done typing so we can see what you've written. And when everybody's done, if I can have 2 volunteers to share what they've written, you can raise your hand if you want to volunteer.
I'll share.
Thanks, Joanna.
So I think, like, as we said a couple slides ago, like, just losing those comrades, you know, like, those people who, you know, you just spend every day with, or you always have something to talk about. We've experienced that recently. 2 good friends of our family who released, and now we never talk anymore. You know, that they lost that connection of work, and it just changed the relationship. So friends for the kids and for the spouses, you know, you may be losing your housing, which then, if you look over to the right for the possible emotional responses, and there could be sadness, hopelessness, loneliness, fear, frustration. However, we've also seen like excitement because it's a new beginning and that sort of that free feeling, right? You're no longer, you don't have to go where the military tells you to any longer. You don't have to give up your family member for the next 9 months, so for deployment. So you can see both the positive and the negative.
Yeah, those are great examples and pretty emotionally heavy impact as well, eh? And Diane, do you want to share?
I guess it's very similar where there's the positives that are coming out of the transition, but also the negative. I was actually talking to a family today who are not transitioning as far as because of retirement, but transitioning to another posting. And she was talking about where they're moving. She's always lived in, they've always rented, whether it was in an apartment or a PMQ. And she said, we're looking at buying. And she said, I never thought of, you know, when you buy a house, you're responsible for it. Like, I don't know anything about plumbing, and neither does my husband, and electrical and all that stuff. So if a family has never purchased a home, that's a big thing, you know, going to civilian world and actually going through the whole step of purchasing a home for the first time, maybe in your 50s or 60s. The other one would be the definitely loss of income that, you know, that you're used to, And so it could be a lower income, but maybe someone was really good at and did save a lot, so income's not going to be a problem. Some families, their grown children have decided to not move with them at their next transition, their retirement, wherever they're going. And so that's been difficult with some families, that their kids don't want to follow them. And they've made their own life. So not only are they transitioning, but they realize, you know, that their kids are going to be on their own and away. And so I've seen families move back to the West Coast and their kids are staying in Ontario. And that's pretty scary for, as a parent, that you're thinking, hey, they have their own life now. Like, oh my God, I'm not their, you know, I'm not their purse string type of thing. And but sometimes it's really positive because they're moving back to their, closer to their family. And but yet, so they're losing one family but gaining the other family, the family ties again.
Yeah, those are great examples. And I hadn't really put much thought into what that example you gave about being a first-time home buyer, but maybe being not a young adult, when most people usually have that transition. So that's a really good example. Thanks. Margaret, I just noticed your example. I wonder if you might share that, because I think it's really important.
Well, if we're talking about medical release losses, sometimes it's a physical mobility issue. So let's say you can't drive anymore, and how much control are you losing there, your loss of independence? I can also relate it to my 88-year young mom who lives with us, and you know, she's lost all that control, and it's very frustrating. It's a lack of confidence. You're not feeling like she doesn't know what her role is anymore. You know, when she used to be able to drive, now she can't. So what is her role? How can she help and still not be a burden?
Yeah, that's a great example. And I mean, we're talking about medical releases, right? So every person who medically releases either has a physical, mental, or sometimes both issue that's preventing them from continuing in the military. So the adjustment and the losses associated with that changing physical ability and mental ability is a huge piece of the puzzle for people.
It's Diane. It's interesting that you say that, Margaret, because my husband had a bilateral knee surgery, so he couldn't drive for 3 months, and he just started driving again on Saturday. And so when I pulled into my driveway this morning, I realized the van was gone, and I kind of panicked, and then I realized that, oh yeah, he's gone to his physio appointment driving himself. But I never realized how it changed his life that he couldn't drive. And he's only 57, and it was like, wow, like when I saw him on Saturday, he was like a little boy again behind the wheel.
Oh, isn't that
kind
lovely?
of interesting, yeah.
Wow, you're absolutely right. Hey, it just takes away the confidence when you don't know your role.
Yeah, those are all great examples. So we've just touched the surface, really, of the internal transition a person experiences during a change, particularly in the case of a medical release. So there are many strategies and factors that can help and support a person through this phase of the transition, and we'll talk more about that a little later. Next, let's look at the next stage of transition, which is the neutral stage. So the neutral stage is often the most uncomfortable stage because of its uncertainty. However, it's also the stage where people have the greatest opportunity to learn about themselves. Working through the neutral stage will help people see the opportunities and challenges where they once saw threats and barriers. So as people begin to accept the change, they begin to create new opportunities and gather strength for the changes to come. This change can be confusing because people often feel caught between the old and the new. The neutral stage is like a bridge that you've kind of decided to cross, even though you don't know what's on the other side. So people may feel scared, unfocused, or depressed. Some people may for a while feel helpless, lonely, and stuck, and all of these feelings are typical. So the neutral stage is a time to question, reflect, talk to other people, explore options, and search for answers. They're activities that can help people become aware of their strengths and start the process of exploring the future. So helping people draw out the values that lie within activities they used to like to do, have wanted to try, or even parts of their job that they used to enjoy can help them connect with new activities that they find the same value in. So for example, an activity I enjoy is reading, and when I think about why I like reading or what it means to me, I'm able to discover that what I value in the activity of reading is the tranquility, the gaining knowledge, and the imagination. So let's all try this with an activity we enjoy or a part of our jobs that we like. So use your text tool to write your name in the first row, then choose an activity you enjoy or have always wanted to try and write that in the second row. In the third row, write the values that are reflected in that activity for you. And give me a happy face when you're ready to share. Diane, you can take your hand down there. Joanna, do you want to share?
Sure. I like singing, and when I sing, whether that's at home to myself or in a church setting or on a stage, I find that it gives me confidence. It can be an emotional release depending on the music. I feel creative, I feel joyful, and it can also bring spiritual connection to my life.
That's awesome. So keeping that in mind, the value that you have in that activity, what's another activity, if for some reason you were no longer able to sing, what's another activity that you might find those same values reflected in?
I would say, I think hiking beautiful places. I always feel confident when I have a really good long hike. It can be very emotionally stimulating. It can also be very spiritual. I can feel joyful. I don't know how much it stimulates my creativity, but it definitely makes me appreciate beautiful things, which I suppose is creative. So I would say hiking, maybe.
That's great. Does anybody else want to share what they've written?
I just recently, well, not recently, within I guess the last year or so, joined a yoga group. Never did yoga. I watched my wife do it. I did it once and I was in pain for days. And I thought, I got to do this. I'm going to try it. And the meditation piece, I could not ever concentrate. And I didn't think I could actually do it, but through the instructions in the meditation class, I got up to 20 minutes of meditation on my own, which was wow. Huge. Yeah, and the health benefits are great. And it makes you learn to calm your body down. It just gives you this sense of value and inner peace, and you learn to relax, stop being, uptight. Yeah, so there's tons of benefits. But the yoga thing, I miss it when I'm not part of the class. Yeah.
Awesome.
And the same benefits with that.
What are some other activities you think that you might be able to find those same values, like the health benefits, the inner peace and relaxation? What are some other activities that you might be able to do that you would find that value in?
For me, I think it's anywhere there's nature, going on hiking trails or walking, and also being around water gives me the same effects.
Yeah, I find the same thing. Those are all awesome examples. So thanks for sharing your personal examples. And this is just one activity that can help people make the most of the neutral stage and begin to explore options for their future. So why don't we move on to the new beginning stage. So after a period of reflection and exploration in the neutral stage, often people are ready to start again by taking things step by step. They may want to move on, try new things, or take a calculated risk. This is the new beginning stage. At this stage, people often begin to feel more energetic and positive as they take the first tentative steps to carry on life. They may also feel excited and a little nervous about the future. They may be thinking things like, am I doing the right thing? Will this work out? They may feel a sense of relief that they're moving forward. These are all typical reactions. So I'm going to share a video that talks a little bit about taking action. Before I share the video, I just want to point out a couple of things. I'm going to ask you to please mute yourselves so that we're not hearing everybody's videos playing. When I share the page, please press play. If you cannot view the video for any reason, I'll put the link to it in the chat, and you can click on the link to view it that way. And it will open in a separate browser that way, though. And please give us a green check when you are back, as everyone will be finished at different times. So just give me a second here, and I'll get the video loaded.
You just click on the tab. There you go.
Okay, does anybody want to share their thoughts on the video?
I'm going to try to eliminate sugar in my coffee. That was very motivating.
Margaret?
I think 30 days seems like forever. I could usually get 4 in pretty good.
Joanna?
Well, I immediately, as he was talking, I immediately thought about 10 things that I'm like, I need to do 10 things. There are these 10 things I need to do. So I think it was inspiring.
What are the 10 things?
Oh my gosh, like, you don't even want to know. It would take me forever. But you know, they come up, like all those things that you know you've been setting aside just because you say you don't have the time. And then you think, I do have the time if I make it a priority for 30 days. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and it's probably more reasonable that you take one thing off of that list of 10 and try that for 30 days so that you don't end up with a big pile of chocolate bars on your desk.
What's wrong with that?
Just a suggestion, but.
I say you put them in a big jar, and that's motivation.
It's like when you're stopping smoking and you put $1 in the jar for each day you don't do it there, or you know, $10 in the jar for each day you don't smoke. That's $300.
Yeah,
well, math is off.
motivating.
That's a lot of money.
For sure. Okay, so moving on, what was pretty clear during that video is that the speaker had hope that helped him take action. So what is hope? Hope is wherever there is uncertainty, confusion, or conflict, there's also hope. Hope is the energy that helps you cope and move through the tough spots in life. And hope is a sense that you'll be okay no matter how things turn out. Very simply, hope is the yes to life. So working through the changes and transitions take time, and overcoming doubts and fears takes a lot of effort. One strategy for managing change is to become intentional about hope. So each person's hope is unique. It is shaped and influenced by the people and events that person has experienced in his or her life. It's inside all of us, even when it's difficult to see. Hope can be accessed through our senses of touch, hearing, sight, taste, and smell. And because each person's hope is different, the way you express hope is as individual as you are. One way to cultivate intentional hope is to develop an active awareness of things and activities that give you hope. Then set short-term goals to build your hope by participating in them. So some possibilities are being creative, painting pictures, identifying hopeful role models, constructing hope collages or taking photographs, volunteering. So I'm really excited to hear everyone's ideas about how hope can be cultivated. So please grab your pointer and claim a space on the whiteboard and use your text tool to write as many ideas of activities as you can or examples you're already doing that may help a person cultivate hope. And if you get to the edge of the table, simply click enter and your cursor will be taken down a line so you can stay in your square. And you can give me a green check mark when you're done again. And just a reminder to give a green check mark when you're all done. Joanna, do you want to share one of your examples?
Sure. I mean, I probably shouldn't use the eating chocolate cake one, but I would say spending time with people who love me makes me feel hopeful. Sometimes you need that outside perspective. You know, when you're feeling down about yourself or your situation, I think it's really great to surround yourself with people who feel good about you and who love you and who support you.
Oh, that's such a great example. I love that example. Thanks for sharing that. Anybody else ready to share? Just remember to click away so we can see what you've written. Jonah, do you want to share one example of what you wrote?
Learning to play an instrument. I think specifically for myself would be piano. I have a beautiful piano and I'm trying to learn, self-taught, but yeah, it's definitely a challenge, but it has its rewards at the end when you've actually been able to complete a little song, right?
Yeah, for sure. I could see how experiencing like success as you're teaching yourself can kind of inspire hope to keep on going and to create bigger goals. Maybe a longer song or something, right?
Or playing with two hands as opposed to one.
All 5 fingers instead of just one.
Yeah.
Awesome. Diane, do you want to share one of your examples?
I think it's something that happened in my personal life. I kind of gave myself some more time for myself, and so I did a lot of reconnecting last winter, reconnecting with friends and some of the dreams that I've always wanted to do but never had time to do, and some of the pastimes. And I've actually set a goal in reading a book once a month. So it's been working out.
That's great. Yeah, I really like that example, reconnecting with loved ones and dreams and things that you forgot you really enjoyed in the past. Margaret, do you want to share one of your examples?
Absolutely. So I would say with reference to hope, I've been working with the coach, and the biggest piece that I've learned is positive self-talk and how to flip something around, because I think I know me personally, I can be my toughest critic. And when I don't engage in positive self-talk, I go down a hopeless path. But when I do, my whole world changes, and the people around me change as well. Ha! They don't really change. I'm the one that changes. But positive self-talk, I think, is the key to my hope.
Yeah, that's such a powerful example for sure. That internal dialogue that really people don't realize is constantly kind of running through our heads. So if it tends to be negative, then likely everything in our world is kind of negative. But if it's hopeful, then that's usually the lens that we're kind of walking through our world with. An awesome example, thanks.
And you know what's funny about positive self-talk is that it leads to positive outside talk. And some people do not get that. So some people want to alienate from you because they think, oh, you're not being real or something else because you're positive. But really, positive self-talk leads to positive outside talk, and it just becomes who you are after your 30 days.
Yeah, and that also tends to filter out positive and negative people from your outside world, too. So the people who share the same kind of vision of being positive will likely still hang around. So hope can play a significant role, really, in helping people manage change more effectively. And thanks for sharing all your examples, guys. So we've learned about what change is, what transition is, and some of the complexities of change and transition for medically releasing members and their families. I'm curious what you would predict as the most important factors of successful transition for people who are medically releasing. So let's do a quick poll to see what everyone thinks. Look at the options you have on the slide, and then in your chat box, type in the letters of the answers that you think are the top 3 indicators of successful transition. And make sure you send your chat to all recipients, or sorry, all participants.
Margaret, you can, yeah, you can do that, or you could also just type, like you can just type yours on the board if you wanted to. Because Margaret signed in as me, so signed in the same person, she's having trouble doing it the way you're asked. But Diane and Donna should have no problem.
Okay. And so whenever people are ready, maybe if you can just share your thoughts or your examples that you think are the top 3.
I think there are some people who for sure would say a love of the dog. The dog's love is.
So Diane, do you want to share what you wrote there?
Oh, did we lose Donna?
Oh. Yeah, looks like it. I said D was my first one, the mental health, and then the social and family relationships, F, and then housing. So I kind of saw the dog with the mental health. I think because if not, I would have put the dog as a priority too, but I think it's important for people to feel good about themselves first.
Yep.
And although I've seen some dogs on the street with the homeless, it's very hard to have a dog when you don't have stable housing. You're right.
That's right. So just for the sake of time, I'll move this on a bit, and I'll let you know that the research actually shows that the top 3, and in order of importance, as reported by many studies, are that the satisfying employment is the most important factor, positive mental health is the second, and positive family and social relationships is the third. So satisfying employment, positive mental health, and positive social and family relationships are the most significant predictors of success as people transition from military to civilian life. So now that we know a little bit more about the different changes and transitions that can be affecting a family during the release process and how important hope is in easing the transition, let's discuss how we can adapt our existing programs to optimize these 3 most important factors of successful transition for families. So in this chart, I've listed some common program areas at all MFRCs, and if the program area where you work is listed, claim this section by writing your name below the program area with your text tool. If your area isn't listed, write your name below a program area that you're familiar with or have ideas about. And in the boxes below the program area, write some strengths that your program has that can help families transition from military to civilian life. So for example, perhaps there's a workshop you offer that can help families adjust to the changes we talked about. And in the enhanced section of the chart, write ideas that you have to expand the program to meet the needs of families going through this kind of transition. So for example, perhaps an idea came to you during the last hour of the workshop that would fit in your program area that could help families transition from military to civilian life, or a partnership idea with another agency even that would help with this transition. And give me a green check when you're ready to share. Jonah just texted me and said that he lost internet connection.
Oh.
And he's at home.
Do you have a storm over there, Tina?
We had a huge storm yesterday, and I think it's still affecting a lot of the telecommunication services because we don't have internet at work. That was one of the main things. So we all went to our homes. Me, Donna, and Diane are all at our homes. But Donna and I live in the same area, and it's not too far away from our work, so I wasn't sure whether we would have internet or not, but it looks like his just got knocked out. And does anybody want to volunteer to start to share what they wrote? Joanna?
Sure, I will. So I think strength of what we do with virtual programs in terms of personal enrichment is that we're providing information, such as this one, to people who maybe can't make it into centers or make it into buildings. We're getting this information into their homes, and I think we're doing a really great job of doing that through virtual programming. How we could enhance it, just finding even more guest speakers on topics that are relevant to military families, you know, things that they care about, not just ones we pull up ourselves, but just, you know, that we're getting feedback saying that this is what we want to hear about. I think we can enhance them by becoming even better at doing follow-up after sessions and giving more actions for people to do. So once they're done with the attending a virtual session, really being good about giving them, you know, 3 steps to enact what you've just learned, and really being more deliberate about providing after actions, I guess, is what I was thinking.
Yeah, I really like that follow-up after the sessions and ask for, I guess, like a commitment to ongoing demonstration of learning and things like that. That's great.
Yeah.
Diane, do you want to share what you've written?
I guess I just never thought of the virtual training until you mentioned it, and I don't know why, because I've taught virtual training at the college level, and I know I can do it, and so that's something that I think I would be able to offer as a parent support, or that type of thing as parent support for sure in virtual training in regards to supporting families if they have issues. And I've done that over the telephone. For example, we had a family who had a child with special needs outside of the North Bay area, and I was able to help them find the funding and finding school support, and I did it all through email and stuff like that. But I could do it through virtual training as a group as well.
Yeah, that's a great idea, and that is something actually I think that Joanna and Margaret do. They do sessions on like the scholarships and things like that, so it's a good example. Margaret, do you want to share?
Yes, I just wanted to answer to Diane as well. We have a recording at the MFRC-PEI that I can send to you, and it's all about for families how to set up their emergency care plan. And this recording was done by a student from BC, and she obviously always says, you know, each MFRC is different, but these are some of the same things that you'll see, and check with your MFRC, and it gives step-by-step how to figure out an emergency child care plan. Would you like me to send that to you?
Sure, that would be great.
Okay. So Tina, with reference to the youth programming, that's what I chose. MFS Europe has a phenomenal employment, youth empowerment program, and it involves employment as well as life skills, as well as a national youth council that meet and talk about issues. wouldn't it be great if we could enhance that by taking a page from there and having a national military youth council with reps across the country come to a virtual session?
Yeah, that's a great example. So what I would hope, and if Jonah were here, Diane, I would, my next point would be to ask us all to commit as an MFRC to follow through with some of the ideas that we generated here in the brainstorming. But I think we'll just save that for a later discussion, and we can kind of decide how we're going to commit to including veterans and families in our MFRC after the session. So maybe I'll just throw the question out there. Has anybody's comfort level changed regarding supporting people through change and transition since the beginning of the session? So the question on the whiteboard, how comfortable do you feel supporting veterans and their families through the change and transition from military to civilian life after participating in this presentation? So Diane was 6.5 at the beginning. I remember Jonah saying he was 6.5 at the beginning as well. Has anybody else changed? Diane, what would you rate yourself at now?
Probably not a 10, but maybe around an 8, I guess.
Awesome. That makes me really happy. That means you learned something and you were able to take something from the session, so I'm happy to hear that. So I'm glad we were able to share ideas over the last, looks like hour and a half now. And thank you for your participation. Are there any questions or comments about the information covered or feedback that you'd like to share?
I just think it was really great to, like I said, sort of towards the beginning, like, man, just to really get it broken down. And when you start seeing just how many areas of your life are affected, I think for people who work with military families such as ourselves, it definitely, I think, gives us that empathy and a greater understanding that when they come and say, this is the transition I'm going through, that we're able to sort of look beyond that now and know that it's not just that transition, but it's affecting every area of their life. And I think just having that knowledge gives you a greater sense of compassion and empathy to be able to, I think, better serve the people who come to us for help.
Yeah, for sure. Empathy is so important, especially as families go through this change, absolutely. So thanks, everybody, for getting through this with me, especially with all the technical difficulties, and I'm just going to hand it over to Joanna now.
All right,
Tina?
Yeah, go ahead, Diane.
I just wanted to toot your horn for a minute. I think at the North Bay MFRC, we helped families before transition. There was always that piece that was offered to families because we never turn families away, of course, but I think you have added a great deal to that piece and are still adding every day, and I just want to thank you because this has been an awesome project.
Thanks, Diane. I appreciate
and hopefully
that.
It won't be just a pilot project down the road. It will be forever.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
All right, so we're going to wrap it up again on behalf of Tina. Just thank you, Diane, and thanks to Jonah, even though he isn't here. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording here. But